Hi there and welcome to TechPlower. I recently bought the DJI microphone system and there are a few settings that you can set via the DJI Receiver. So let's go through them. As you can see, I also have my lavalier mic as a backup because I'm gonna change some settings and the audio can go all over the place or even go out. So I have this backup from my lavalier mic as well. And at some point I would even need to use the backup recording from the DJI Transmitter. So let's start by looking at what we see on the display. As you can see, I have my DJI microphone connected to the receiver and the green bar is going up and down. Then we have the red dot here. That means that I also have a recording going on the DJI Transmitter as a backup. We have the battery level of the DJI Transmitter, and up here we see that the transmitter has a good connection. We see the bars here. And my transmitter is actually connected as transmitter 2. That's why we see 2 here. Then up here we have the battery level of the receiver itself. And then in this corner we see the mode I'm recording in, which in this case is mono. So we looked at what we can see on the screen. But let's look at some quick settings that can be accessed from the DJI Receiver for the DJI Transmitter. To access those, you simply swipe up from the bottom like this. And here we see that my receiver 2, is actually recording the backup recording on the transmitter. So if I click that, I'm stopping the backup recording on the transmitter. But if we press it again, we start the backup recording on the DJI Transmitter again. In the middle here, we can simply mute the DJI Transmitter like this. So now you're hearing the backup recording from my Aperture A Lav. But if I unmute the DJI Transmitter again, we have the audio back from the DJI Transmitter. So the last option here shows me how many hours I have left on the internal storage of the DJI Transmitter. So if I press that, I see the same information and I even have an option to format the internal storage. But I can't do that while I'm recording. So if we go back here, so that's all for the quick settings for the DJI Transmitter on the DJI Receiver. So if we go back, but there are more configurations that we can set on the DJI Receiver. But how do we access those? We simply swipe from the top this time around. So in the first option, we can set how we are going to store the recordings. So currently I have it set to mono. Unfortunately, since I'm connected to my iPhone, these settings can't be changed. But if I disconnect the receiver, I can show you. If I remove the receiver from my iPhone and swipe down, and go to the storage settings, you now see that I can actually click the mono option. So if I click it, I get the mono safety channel option. This means that we get a dual channel recording where one channel is the normal recording and the other channel is recorded in 6 decibels lower volume. So if I suddenly speak much louder and that's peaking the audio, then I simply can use the safety channel and use that part of the audio for that section. You also have stereo option, which is kind of not useful for me because I only have one DJI transmitter, but for the dual transmitter setup, you can then have both transmitter recording to the same receiver, but into separate channels. And you can actually decide whether you want receiver 1 or 2 going into left or right channels by clicking here. But since I only have one DJI transmitter, I use the mono option. So the next option is the receiver gain. If you press that, you see that the receiver gain is 0 dB or 0 decibels. Here we can either increase the receiver gain all the way to 12 decibels. And you will hear it in the audio that you're listening to, that the audio gets higher. So here the receiver is boosting the audio coming from the transmitter. And likewise, we can lower the receiver gain all the way to minus 12 dB. And you will surely hear that the audio gets lower now. But let's keep it consistent and put it back up to 0. So the next option is volume. And you see an icon of headphones. So this option allows you to change the volume of the headphones that are connected to the receiver if you want to monitor the audio coming through the receiver. At the moment, I don't have headphones connected to the receiver, Here you have the same range as for the receiver gain. We can boost the audio of the headphones all the way up to 12 dB or lower it all the way down to minus 12 dB. But of course we can also match what we have in the receiver gain to 0 dB. The next setting is the transmitter settings. So if we go into that, the first option is low cut. So if we press that, we simply have on or off. So low cut is an option to try to get rid of some low frequency audio in your surroundings. So if you have a humming sound or something like that, the low cut option could help you get rid of those frequencies from your audio. So in my surroundings here, I actually don't have that much low frequency audio. So I will actually put it to off. And you can let me know if you hear any difference in the audio with the low cut setting to off. The next setting inside the transmitter settings is the transmitter gain. And you guessed it. It's really similar to the receiver gain, but now for the transmitter. You see here that I have two options, transmitter 1 and transmitter 2. But I only have one transmitter. Why is that? Well, the receiver is the same for the single transmitter packets and the dual transmitter packets. And in my case, my transmitter is linked as transmitter 2. So if I press that, you can see that now it's set to 0 dB. But if I increase the boost of the transmitter gain all the way up to 12 decibels, you will certainly hear the difference similarly as when I increase the receiver gain. And the same way I can lower the transmitter gain all the way to minus 12 dB and the audio will get lower. But as before, to keep the audio consistent throughout the video, I'll keep it at 0 dB for now. I can select transmitter 1, but it won't have any effect because there is no transmitter connected to transmitter 1. So the next option here for the transmitter is rack stop lock. What does that mean? Well, if I go into it, you simply have off or on. But this simply means that if I put this to on, I can start the internal recording on the receiver. Clicking the rack button on the DJI transmitter won't do anything. So I won't accidentally turn off the internal recording of the DJI transmitter. But in my case, I will just keep it off. The next setting is auto record. This one is a little bit tricky for the single transmitter option because I'm not sure it will work. In the dual transmitter package, we have a charging case. And this setting works, in that case at least, if I have it on, that when you take the transmitter out of the charging case, it will automatically start an internal recording. I'm not sure if it works with the single transmitter package because then you don't have a charging case, but of course you have a charging cable. So maybe that's equivalent, but that's something I have to try out. So in my case, I will just keep it on off. The next option here is vibration notification. So every time I turn on the DJI transmitter or turn it off, or I start or stop the internal recording on the DJI transmitter, I get a vibration if the setting is on. And that is actually really handy to get a vibration on actions that you do on the DJI transmitter. But if I don't want it, I can simply turn it off. But I think it's a really neat feature, so I'll keep it on. And the last option for the DJI transmitter, it's the LED brightness. So as you can see now, the LED lights are quite bright on the DJI transmitter. But if I change it to low, you can see that the LED lights are almost not visible in the bright environment I'm in now. And I can also turn them completely off and you won't see the LED lights on the DJI transmitter because they're turned off. But for me, I'm gonna keep it on high for now. So these were all the DJI transmitter settings, but there are more settings. Next one just says settings. What does that mean? Let's click it and find out. So if you go to the end, the first option is link device. So this option is used to link the DJI transmitter to the receiver. But when you get your DJI receiver and transmitter, they are already linked. As you can see, with this yellow link, my DJI Transmitter is linked as Transmitter 2, and you can see that there is no transmitter linked as Transmitter 1. But if I have an additional transmitter, I would simply click link and link them together. The next option is brightness. And this simply controls the brightness of the receiver display. So we can decrease the brightness and increase the brightness. Really simple. Next up is language. And here we can simply change the language that is displayed on the receiver. So I have English, because that is the language I understand. But we have a lot of more languages to select from, as you can see. But let's keep it on English, so I know what I'm doing. Next option is date and time, and that simply allows you to change the date and time of the receiver. Next up is factory reset, and that one kind of explains itself. It simply resets all the settings on the receiver and the transmitters to its factory settings. And if I click that, I get a warning. Are you sure you want to do this? And if I want to do this, I click confirm, but while I'm recording, I'm not going to do this, so I click cancel. The next option is version. Here you can see the firmware version on the receiver, the firmware version of my DJI Transmitter, and if I had the dual transmitter package, I would of course see the firmware version of both transmitters. But since I only have one DJI Transmitter, I only see the one. And at the far end here, you see the serial number of the DJI Mic system. The last option here is compliance info, and that simply shows you all kinds of compliance information. Not very exciting, but really necessary. So these were all the settings that you can configure in the DJI microphone system. I really hope you liked this video, and hopefully it was helpful as well. And if you like my video content, please consider subscribing, because it really helps my channel. See you in my next video.